You are about to see John Valenzuela speaking at the UC Santa Cruz Kresge Seminar Room on Saturday, February 8, 2014. The event was hosted by the UC Santa Cruz Common Ground Center, Education for a Just and Sustainable World. To find out more information, visit kresge.ucsc.edu/common ground.
So it may be easy to forget with the beautiful rain that we've had the past 2 days, but last month Governor Jerry Brown declared a drought emergency across the state of California. According to a New York Times article, near Sacramento, the low level of water in the stream has brought out a bunch of prospectors sifting for flakes of gold in the slow-running waters, while to the west, the heavy water demands of the medical marijuana growers is drawing down streams where salmon and other endangered fish spawn. With small spurts of relief in sight, farmers' fields remain uncultivated across the central coast of California. 40,000 people in 17 rural communities face drinking water shortages, and children in urban areas are ushered inside to play away from the thickening smog. As we face the worst water drought in 500 years, the Common Ground Center is honored to welcome John Valenzuela and his colleague Nick Slobodian, a UCSC graduate in agroecology, and now a permaculture design, education, and land management coordinator in Santa Cruz. Tonight we are at the space to discuss methods of maintaining a diverse, fulfilling, and secure food supply. Yeah. Last November, Nick and John went to the 11th International Permaculture Convergence in Cuba, the world's only sustainable country according to a report done by the World Wildlife Fund. What might we in California learn from Cuba's pioneering initiatives in food and farming? What collective actions might we take to build thriving, abundant, and resilient food systems in the face of an uncertain climate future? Join me in welcoming John Valenzuela and Nick Slobodian in cultivating shared knowledge and answering these pertinent questions. Thank you.
Howdy. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And welcome. I forgot what rain was like. Isn't it beautiful and amazing? Wow. I also want to embrace, who else went to Cuba for the International Convergence? So there's about four of us here. So please, we want to hear from everybody because we spent a lot of time together. There are so many things that happened. I did take a lot of photos. I won't show you all of them. I took probably about 2 weeks, 14 days. I took a couple hundred photos a day, so I pared it down for you. But there's some really interesting things about Cuba. I'm not an expert on Cuba at all. This is my first time visiting Cuba. I did live for 15 years in the tropics in Hawaii, so I am familiar with tropical plants and agroforestry systems. And so I'm able to interpret those and recognize just about all the plants there. But there were a lot of really interesting social aspects that I'll touch on, and I think that we'll get into, especially later in the evening, to discuss the implications of community building and resilience. Not just pretty plants. But anything else we want to say? I want to thank David Shaw and the University of California for hosting me and allowing us this space here. It's awesome. We didn't quite get down to the garden, but we thought it's more cozy, so we might as well just have soup and tea and stand here. We could go down there. I got a headlight. So what I wanted to do is just give a little context first, and then we'll kind of go on some of the visual tour of what we got to see there. So please join me. And the purpose of this, what brought us there, was this International Permaculture Convergence, and they happen every few years. This is the 11th one. It happens in a different place in the globe. And so, to have it come so close to where we live, I mean, They're in the Caribbean. It's not too far. You know, it's not like Asia or Africa or somewhere farther away. So I had traveled before in Latin America, and it was, I thought, a very unique situation. The theme being Cuba towards hurricane-proof permaculture systems, also permaculture in islands and cities facing climate changes. And the way that I chose to go there was through a tour company that I highly recommend. Global Exchange, you've heard of those guys? Mm-hmm. They put on some of these green fests and stuff like that. Yeah, they're a great group, and they have these reality tours all over the world, actually, where they're showing people not the tourist trail, but really what's happening with the people, their environment, their social situation, human rights, and the Eco-Cuba network. And they were just great. They really, as a new person there, I felt really taken care of, so I really want to acknowledge them for taking care of us so well. Thanks. Next one. So, the whole kind of, one of the most interesting things about Cuba is that they were so locked into this energy dependence thing like we are, but through the Soviet Union. There's a lot of oil and energy in the Soviet Union, and because of their economy and politics, they were closely aligned, and they were very dependent on them for a lot of pesticide imports and fuel imports and stuff. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, there was this, in 1990, they called it the special period. And those people who are, who were old enough to remember that time, it was pretty harsh. All of a sudden, food imports, energy imports, growing their own food locally was difficult because they were all set up for this energy-intensive system. So when that happened, people were hungry. It was hard to get around. It was hard. And so, but they became resourceful. They started looking at their own resources in the earth and water, soil fertility and water, and they got some help from some folks from different parts of the world. But the two films that really kind of tell that story in more detail is The Greening of Cuba and The Power of Community. Have you guys seen it? Anybody seen those? Yeah, I recommend them. You can usually find them on YouTube, bits and pieces of them. But that tells you the stories, the bigger picture. But specifically with the permaculture aspect, it's really grown a lot. And our friend Roberto Perez, along with many others, they work with this Antonio Nunez Jimenez Foundation for Nature and Humanity, which is kind of the permaculture group that's an established NGO there in Cuba that really does a lot of extension and education work. And they have this little symbol here of these people kind of reaching up like a tree like that, and green below and blue above. That's kind of their symbol. We saw that like at so many places down there, and these little gardens and big farms and everything. But what happened was in the early 90s, like around 93 or so, all these, some Australians and some other permaculture folks from different parts of the world came to Cuba and offered their assistance. How can we help you guys be more sustainable? And they went to work. And so there's been a permaculture presence there early on. So the Caribbean. It was a little bit cheaper for me to fly a different day of the week, so I spent a couple days in Mexico in anticipation of the flight over to Havana, Cuba. So I stayed in Cancun, Mexico for a few days. And this is what I was interested in. Behind me is not so pretty, looking at this picture. It was rather shocking. I mean, I've been to a lot of places in Mexico, and I grew up in Southern California. I've seen some excesses, but it was shocking. It really was. Cancun is kind of shocking. So be forewarned. But being the curious fellow that I am, I did get to sleep in the hammock and get in the ocean and all that. But just looking at the landscape itself, there I am looking at the #1 most important food plant in the world, I would call it, the coconut. The most important tree for people in the world. More people depend on this tree than any other tree in the world. Throughout the tropics, certainly near coastal areas. But this is probably my #1 permaculture plant in the world. There's just so many uses for it. Everybody now is drinking that coconut water and everything. And but the copra, the oil, the fibers, just so many things about it, and its ability to deal with brackish water and so forth. But right off the bat, I felt at home being there with what is also one of the Polynesian canoe plants that the Polynesians spread throughout the Pacific Basin. Next one. So even there in Cancun, there are food-producing and agroforestry types of plants to learn about. And this is one of my favorite, Almendra del Mar, the sea almond, you could call it. Distantly not exactly related to almonds, but very similar. Edible flesh around the husk there, and then an actual little almond that tastes good in there. Totally adapted to the ocean. And look at these beautiful, the leaves are briefly deciduous, turn colors, really an ornamental plant, and that's why it's there. It's just a perfect beach plant, but yeah, food. And the locals were like, because the locals work in the hotels, right? They kind of lost their, some of them have a farm, like some of the taxi drivers. Oh yeah, I got mi rancho, se dicen, right? I got my little farm, out in Merida or somewhere, away from the coast, but yeah, I got to work the taxi to pay, for college or whatever, for my kids. But yeah, some of these people are, they forget about this stuff, but it's there. Another one that is throughout the tropics, pan-tropical for sure, but definitely in the Caribbean, is this sea grape, uva del mar. And this obviously is growing right next to the ocean. Beautiful, beautiful tree. But this thing these are actually like little berries you can eat. Next one. And look at how productive. They are, how can I describe them? They're slightly aromatic, and so they have a little bit of a herbaceous tinge to them. They have to be totally ripe, but of course people make wine out of them, stuff like that. But here's something that's totally native, adapted to the climate. Next. Behind the shopping center, it's like the landscapes are all done up, and often the landscapers will take a little corner and do their own thing, right? They'll have the lawn over here and the flowers and this and that. But over in the corner, tucked away, behind, in this abandoned walkway, this is the lagoon on the inside and the ocean's over here. But in this little area, there's a little, the Mayan people are close to the earth, and the guy fit right under this bush here. And so this is his little garden, and there's the aloe vera, papaya, pineapple, and this little shrub here is known as the Mayan spinach, or chaya. And that you will see around here in the Bay Area, Oakland, I've seen it in Richmond. I bet you in some of the Latino communities around here you'll find this shrub. Southern California, no problem. But it's actually in the euphorbia family. Next, please. And it's got the milky sap. It's got the milky sap, but you cook it, and it's the wild one has spines that sting, but this one is real tender, and just a brief steaming of it will yield these. And I mean, the thing's bulletproof. It is a strong plant, but yeah, Mayan spinach or chaya, you should be able to find some of that in some of your Central American friends' yards. Ask them about it, and they just grow by cuttings. They don't really make seed, but a very nutritious perennial vegetable.
You eat the leaf?
That's what you eat.
Okay.
That's what you eat, the leaf. This is in one of my favorite books, Eric Toensmeyer's perennial vegetable book. He has about 100 different species in that book of perennial vegetables. He goes through not only cold temperate stuff, but tropical stuff and everything in between. So this is definitely on his list there. Next. We finally got into Cuba in the evening. Everything's all delayed, like things don't go on the schedule you think they might. Everything's kind of just like, what? Okay. And I totally had no expectations. Coming here, I didn't know what to expect. I was open, and I knew that it wasn't as perfect as some people told me, and I knew it wasn't as bad as some people told me, so I was just open. So we got in the middle of the night and rode into town on the buses from the airport, and immediately this iconic kind of art and propaganda is just everywhere. So this is on the big, this is like a 20-story hotel, and this is about a 6-foot image of Che Guevara there, you know, out in the neon lights there. And just all their patriotic heroes and everything are all always being, praised and respected throughout the land here. But it was really interesting. Havana is like a land lost in time. I mean, it's like, the buildings are literally like falling apart. I'm not, like the infrastructure in that, it seems like they haven't really done much in like 20 or 30 years or something. Like the buildings literally are barely not even being painted and stuff. And then it's wet, it's tropical. It rains 100 inches a year there. So the jungle can just go big really fast. So part of it is really like in ruins. It was remarkable, and the lushness of it was hard to stop. You know, there was stuff just growing on top of roofs and everything. You know, so next.
It's like Jumanji.
Yeah. You don't know what's in there. So where the main part of the conference was in Havana was in this Havana Libre hotel. Hotel Havana Libre was newly built when the revolution happened in 1954, I think it was. And it was newly built by the Hilton Hotels when the revolution happened. And so Che ruled from up here in the brand new hotel when they had the revolution, right? And this is where we had our conference. And this area, you can see a lot of these trees were fruit trees, like those almendras and stuff, but so much of this art, and it's kind of like, you know, a retro, you know what I mean? This stuff is, a lot of this stuff's really old, you know, this is from the 50s and 60s and stuff, and look at this architecture inside the hotel there itself. So we went in to have our proceedings there. We were there for 3 days, and so we were kind of in Havana and did some tours around Havana and stuff before we went to a rural site for more of the convergence where we had more time to have more presentations. So this was actually attended by over 400 people in town here. And we had different delegations. Next, please.
Use the pointer so you stay in the camera scene, you know?
Yeah, there was a lot of beautiful art there. And I'm really interested in art and what it's communicating. And my thing is fruit, so I'm always looking at the fruit in the art. But for example, in this one, this was in our main dining area. And I'm looking at this, some of it's very fanciful and artistic, you know, sunflower and undetermined things. But in this bowl here, there are very specific kinds of fruit there. And can anyone identify either of these two fruits here?
Yeah.
So this one here is a very unique Cuban fruit. This is the national fruit of Cuba. It's called mamey. The mamey sapote. It's big like a football almost, and it looks like one too. It's kind of tan and leathery, and you'll find them at the mercados latinos around here. And inside, it has this jewel of a seed that's like a big black shell or dark brown shell, but the flesh is this kind of pumpkin avocado, amazing kind of pudding to it. So it's a very unique one. Unfortunately, I was unable to eat a mamey during my visit. It was not the right season, but I got over it. On the other hand, so that's an indigenous fruit, right? That's a fruit from the Caribbean. On the other hand, this here is the sandia, the watermelon, right? And where does the watermelon come from? Africa. Yeah, the desert in Africa. And so that's what Cuba is, right? It's a mix of indigenous and African people. And I thought it was interesting, this fruit bowl here. So I'm always kind of trying to make these connections. At the conference, we had island people there representing There's Roberto from Cuba. I forget this guy's name, but he was from the Canary Islands, I think, or Azores. And then this gentleman was from Haiti. And this woman was from one of the French islands just north of Venezuela there. One of those.
Curacao.
Curacao, right. Thank you. And then Hunter I know from Oahu in Hawaii. So they were having a little panel there, but it was really beautiful to see the international crowd. We had people from as far away as Africa and Taiwan, people from right in the community there. I had friends who grew up in Miami, 90 miles away, but had never come there, only hearing about the people who escaped Cuba and who were feeling oppressed and all the bad stories about Cuba. They lived 90 miles away and had never been there, and they were there for their first time. Plus, lots of Latino, lots of people from Latin America, Central America, South America, all over there for sure. And of course from the United States, because we're rich, we have money, we're close. So there was a lot of people from the United States, and almost an embarrassing amount of people from California. I mean, out of 400 people, there was at least 40 people from California. We were rolling wide. It was, I couldn't help it. I mean, that's just how it was. So, but it was really interesting to see not only people from all over the world, but also people from around the block who, when are you going to hang out for 2 weeks with somebody and dance salsa all night and drink a little rum and then go learn about this and that? I mean, that's like an experience you don't get, even though you know somebody for years. Yeah, you go to something like this, it's like, wow, okay. You got to give them that thing, right? Yeah, I remember. So, next. So being in town and you're sitting there and, I've studied permaculture for many years and I'm always learning, don't get me wrong. And I was a little restless, and I wanted to see what Havana was about, It's like, okay. And so whenever we got the chance, we were out making the rounds and looking for markets and just getting around town, trying to explore things. This was right next to our hotel, and this is one of those chaya plants.
Oh my God.
Right? That little one that we saw in Cancun. Here's one that's like 20 years old. It was like fill up this room, kind of the size one, So just being able to recognize some of that stuff around town was really fun. This was actually a school that we found, and I saw these big date palm trees, kind of wet for date palms there, but I saw this banana patch. I was like, wow, that's a lot of bananas. And it was next to this school. And then I peeked into the chain link, and here's one of the maintenance guys just helping get things ready. The kids could probably come out there once in a while, but he was mostly kind of taking care of it. But yeah, school gardens definitely happening. And then at this end of the schoolyard was this particular tree that maybe you guys have heard of that's really important tree. It's kind of lanky and branchy. A lot of times people will coppice it low and make it branch out. They let this one kind of grow tall. And see all the little pods up here at the top? They have seeds that you can get the oil out of. They call it oil of Ben. Here's the flowers. And when the pods are green, you can eat them. The leaves are edible. This is the moringa, or horseradish tree, Moringa oleifera. It's one of those superfood things you've been hearing about. People are using it nowadays for nutrition and dieting and all kinds of stuff, but it's very drought tolerant and very easy to propagate by seeds or cuttings. Too frost sensitive for here, if you're wondering. But could be in a hotter part, like if you were out in Gilroy or over the hill kind of, it would like that summer heat, and you just have it in a pot and bring it in and protect it from the frost in the winter. But you could overwinter this easily as long as you kept the roots dry and didn't let it freeze. But in Southern California, this is like a dooryard thing. Down in Southern California, a lot of people have that. Filipinos, I see a lot of Filipino yards now in Southern California. Next. And other perennial vegetables. Probably one of the most important, I would say, and when you're thinking about drought, the moringa for sure, but this one too, the opuntia, or prickly pear, they call it. This one's not the prickly one. Look, it's spineless. And this, Luther Burbank didn't do this one. There were other spineless ones than the ones that Luther Burbank did, but this for the young pads, the nopalitos. The nopal is a really important perennial vegetable, plus it can give you fruits. So that one you should learn how to eat, because that's really good for your digestion, and it needs no irrigation at all. It can be a nice living fence, And there are ones that have fewer spines, like you can see this one is relatively spineless. Food there in Cuba seemed kind of difficult still. Even though there was a lot of urban farms and people had little gardens and stuff, there is kind of like food allotments where people would get supplied subsidized food, like rice. Like up here it's saying rice and black beans, some pasta once in a while, spaghetti, azúcar, sugar and oil and coffee and eggs and even matches and tobacco. Used to get certain allotments for a discounted price. So to make sure that nobody really went hungry. But if you wanted anything more than that, it was kind of expensive for them, it seemed to me, for their wages, So a lot of people got into gardening for those reasons. And then maybe if they grew enough, they might sell a little bit. And so there is a transition now between a purely centralized, controlled economy and a little bit of like entrepreneurship. And that's really, I think, stimulating people to maybe even eat healthier than that. In that they could grow some for themselves and maybe sell a little bit on the side or something like that. I think they're eating better for that. Next. Again, just getting a little bit into more of the politics. I mean, there's so much deep. Any place that's been through revolution has got some deep wounds and scars that people have. And just the artwork, like this was in a hotel. Just look at that. Can you feel that? That's a revolution right there. It's painful, a lot of it, and there's people who suffer greatly on all sides. So I just want to mention that it feels close. It wasn't that long ago. In the United States, Native people were killed a long time ago. State became a state 150 years ago. That was a long time ago. This was 50 years ago. One generation. People were there. They remember. Next. So with the art and the politics, I mean, everywhere you go is the socialist propaganda. Just like everywhere when you go here is the capitalist propaganda. Buy this. They're saying, "Viva Cuba Libre." Long live free Cuba, right? Next. This one you can't see very well, but this was the most modern looking one that I saw. And you can see the earth is being destroyed there. And this beast, all this shadowing here, are all corporate logos, all corporate names. Is what all this shading is here. All these little things here is Exxon and McDonald's and everybody else. That's who that is. And these little hooks here, that's the 99%. That's the rest of us, putting the hooks on all that. Next. Of all the presentations, I got us to are here. I mean, I know some of these people. I can't say that I'm doing this. I might be helping incidentally these folks who are doing these projects. But I must admit, Northern California, the Bay Area, had some of the most revolutionary presentations of the conference. I'm not saying better or worse. I know different countries have different politics and you can and can't say whatever. But these people came from Oakland. This movement generation, uniting the front lines. Here's all the cities that are working in Chicago, Richmond, Los Angeles, Vermont, Black Mesa, Oakland, Boston, New Mexico. They're doing this climate justice alliance thing, working with people who are affected by climate change and, are oppressed communities and all these things. Really great. And another project they're working on, I mean, they're pulling out like, yeah, we get our inspiration from the Black Panthers, and that's the kind of stuff they're talking about. It was pretty impressive. I was like, wow. Is this community regeneration project? They're taking people and doing a retraining program for people to come back into society after they've been in prison. So they're doing a whole. Here's a whole thing here. It's in conjunction with these folks, Greenlight Planning Justice out of Oakland Hub, Oakland Merritt College. Christopher Shine will be teaching permaculture course with them. And the Sustainable Economies Law Center. They're having ceremony and ritual, financial support, circles of reconnection, case management, permaculture design course. They get the social entrepreneurism, and on and on. So I was proud to be from this part of the world there and to see how we were doing good things, or people I know anyway. I just felt good about that anyway. Yeah. There's troubles there, but most people do believe that their system's the best. That socialism is the way that they're going to get the best healthcare and the best education in the world, really. And when they say it's the most sustainable country in the world, it's mostly because they're poor. They have low impact because people don't have a bunch of stuff. It's pared down. What they have is their culture. They have their pride and their music and their politics and their revolutionary spirit. And that's what they have. And next, living free and independent, yeah, with a centralized government, kind of. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. We did get to tour around some of the urban gardens, just kind of in the outskirts of Havana, after the conference was over. And our transition to the rural areas. And so this is kind of typical of some areas that have a little bit of yard around the house. Now, if you're in the urban core, it's different. I showed you some little patches here and there, but these areas actually have yards. If you have a yard, people are going to have fruit trees, they're going to have a little fish pond, they're going to catch water, they're going to have a composting toilet, they're going to have a worm box, they're going to have shade gardens transitioning the sun, right, that forest edge. Right? Not in the deep dark forest, but on the forest edge, a forest clearing, right? That's the kind of edges that we're talking about when we're doing our gardens. So we all got to tour and look at people's little home gardens, and it was really cool to see like the little ways they set up. A lot of raised beds because they get a lot of rain there, so you want the drainage and stuff. So there's a lot of edged and raised beds and different styles of crazy containers and stuff, and people just recycling everything. I mean, there was nothing wasted. There was like hardware stores and stuff? Yeah, not so much. Next. And so under her citrus, along the edge of the citrus and her fence, she had pigeon pea and yam vines. So in the tropics and in here, in these subtropical warmer areas like we live in here, citrus is very important. It's like a staple. And for us in this climate, it carries us through the winter months. We have the deciduous fruit in the summer and fall, and then we have the subtropical stuff in the fall into spring. It's the perfect little bridge for us. So citrus is really important for them too. And then these plants, a root crop, the true yams, Dioscorea, and there are hardy ones that we can grow here, like there's the hardy Japanese yams that you can find. You can buy the little bulblets of those, or those are hardy in this climate for sure. They're not yams like orange sweet potatoes, different species. Those are Ipomea, like Convolvulus, Morning Glory. Totally separate than true yams, Dioscorea, like that have the female hormones and all that stuff. Then this bush is an awesome one. Again, probably won't make it up here, a little bit too cool and frosty, but loves the heat if you're out in the Central Valley and thrives in Southern California. Pigeon pea, Cajanus cajun, is a shrub that makes beans on it just like crazy. Here's the little pea flowers. Look at all those pea pods, like little bean pods on a shrub this tall. Great for fodder, mulch, eat the beans, green, cook them dry, whatever. It's just a great agroforestry plant, fantastic. Plant a seed and nine nuts, it's this big, giving you all that. And it'll last for 5 years. So anyway, those were some cool things that she had in her yard. Another place we visited was nearby. And what I loved about some of these places, they have a lot of good signage. And if you would like to share, it's nice to have communication that isn't you having to explain every single thing every single time to every single person. So make some nice labels, not only for yourself, but visitors. Think about visitors to your garden and how you might use that as a tool to share what you're excited about. And so as we toured around, you can see this woman, look at her. She's like so dressed up. I was like, it was like, people were really excited to share their gardens with us, you know. And that's what this woman is doing here. She's talking about this garden here. And Sevillano, Proyecto Sevillano is their little place, and they have a little sign-up thing here, and they have the little Antonio Nunez, Jimenez, you know, propaganda there, you know. It's like people, you know, taking care of themselves. This was an amazing, if anybody knows what a star apple is, caimito, anybody? Huge one, beautiful. Underneath the leaves is like this golden coppery color. They have these big beautiful fruits, but that's what these trees are in the back, and this one here. But it was relatively foresty. There was some pigs out in the back there. But this is a very popular thing. They drink a lot of rum. So it was like, they don't have just like lumber and like, yeah, let's get some cement bricks. You know, it's expensive. So what do they have? A lot of rum bottles. So that's what they're going to edge their garden borders with. Okay. And but wouldn't there be buds and stuff there? I don't know. Wouldn't you be afraid with tools and stuff? That's what they like to do next. This place had the most signage. It was awesome. It was awesome. And this place is almost like a refuge. In Latin America, there's a lot of domestic violence. There's the whole macho kind of Latin American ethic that still persists, even though it's, you know, revolutionary and all this stuff. There is still those problems. And so this place is, in fact, let me just read you a few of these things. Well, certainly welcome. So it says that nature is our home, and our home is nature. This permacultures are against the family violence. You can read some of these other ones. You guys can read Spanish better than me. I can't remember what that one says. Oh, the principles of permaculture, right there at the gate. Like, okay, you're entering the permaculture zone. Here it is. Like, think about this as you enter my garden. You know, that's awesome. Next. Yeah. So there's more of this. Love thee without violence, right? Is what that says. So yeah, the women in Cuba are very powerful, and the men are, you know, they might be the spokespeople or whatever, but the women are very powerful in Cuba, and they're really doing a lot, and they're organizing. And it's like, you know, I see like Roberto running around, but there was this cadre of these women that were I think were pretty much running the show. But yeah, they're very active, and they're very powerful. It was good to see that. Next. Some of the other places this is still within that same garden. They had the banana circle, these nice, again with the bottles, the lined beds, a lot of alliums and greens and fruits, a lot of garden art. This says that's the happiness patio, right? And then gray water for sure, roof catchment for sure, and here the system of sane waste management, I guess you could say. So this is their dry composting toilet. This is their human manure toilet. So they had a composting toilets there. I like this little information graphic here. Look at this. See this sphere with the phases of the moon? That's about planting with the phases of the moon. Can you dig that?
Wow.
See, full moon. You do this. Quarter moon, do that. On the other side, have the new moon. That's really cool. I dug that. So yeah, they had it going on, man. It was really beautiful. Here's some rain catchment here, right? They had it packed in. It was a really neat place. Next. Within that, they had this área de descanso, a little like classroom almost, like a little rest area. It was like a little covered thing, so when it rained, you could get out of the rain. It had a few chairs. Had all this information, you know, posters and handbills about classes and stuff. And then here were little jars of seeds. Like here, take home some seeds, you know. And then a lot of there's Fidel, there's the flag of Cuba. Here's Fidel and Raul, his brother. And then here we have the dynamic duo that came into notoriety in the last couple of decades is our friend from Venezuela there. Hugo Chavez, rest in peace. He was really helping Cuba a lot. And I had friends who told me who were there in Cuba 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago, and they said there was hardly any cars because the oil was so expensive, but they got a lot of this cheap Venezuelan oil, and there was a lot of cars in Havana. We were choking. And almost everybody had like sore throats, and it was that, you know, because they don't have modern cars. You know, all those beautiful cars from the 50s? Bad polluters, you know, they're bad. They look cool, they are stinky and bad. And so, yeah, so Hugo Chavez helped them out, but so it's that weird thing. And with the embargo too, it's like, yeah, the embargo is bad, but what if there was no embargo? What would that mean for the economy? And, you know, I said I wanted to get there before McDonald's did, because I don't know what it's going to be like if the embargo's gone, for good and bad. And then here's some of the funding. Look, the Canadian government and all these different organizations are helping fund this kind of rural development and education and extension stuff that they're involved in. But look at that. Grassroots. Okay, next. We got out into some bigger scale stuff. This was a little bit farther out of town. And it was kind of open country, but they had these huge apartment blocks. I'll show you some of them later. But they were just like these giant, like, what would they call them in the United States? Like projects. The projects, you know, those big kind of block apartment buildings, huge, 15 stories tall. And so, but across the street are these farms, these educational farms. So organoponico is like the term they use for organic farms of this, these kind of raised bed gardens were very popular there. And I mean, it seems like a lot of infrastructure to get them up like that, but they're able to keep control of the soil moisture because they get heavy rains there. And the problem is that when you have heavy rains, sometimes you can't get into your fields and work them because everything's so saturated. So having these raised bed in a heavy rainfall climate is very useful for them. So they have not only starts, this is their greenhouse, and they got some money from some other countries to do this, but look at these seedling flats. It looks like something I'd use right here on campus, right? You know, modern stuff. So they're pumping out seedlings for people. They have grafted fruit trees, frutales de injerto. They have fresh vegetables, of course, they sell, and ornamental plants and all these other kind of nursery things that they produce there. And people are trained there. So they're producing things and selling them, and people are learning things there and having trainings there. Really what they're into a lot of is a lot of the worm production. Recycling vegetables and animal manure. There wasn't that many animals there. I was surprised. I thought there would be a lot more chickens and like rabbits and goats and stuff. There wasn't as many as I thought there should have been or would have been, could have been, I don't know. But a lot of the nice natural building materials, a lot of thatch and small diameter wood, pole wood. But these are these enormous and well-loved and cared for worm beds. And they fertilized everything with those. Next. In addition, they had various things going on besides the pure veggie, like lettuce thing. Lettuce. Okay, I like lettuce, but come on. So they had some agroforestry stuff going on too. So here you see some hedgerows of plants in between staple crops. So you have banana patches. These are some other nitrogen-fixing trees. These are mulberries. There was some silkworm cultivation going on, I heard at some point. But this is good mulch fodder and mixed fruits. So then the sweet potatoes and squash in between as staple crops. They had a lot of value-added products that they were demonstrating. They had kitchens, and they made tinctures, and they made medicine, and they made jellies and jams and all kinds of vinegars and stuff. So they were displaying all those as their organic agricultural products here. And these are little information sheets that you could acquire that would give you like a one-page how to make vinegar, one page, you know, how to make jam, one page how to dry your fruits. really tight, good information, excellent. And then this was some of their medicinal herb beds. This is aloe vera, and you can see it has some, other weeds or plants left to grow, like the marigolds and stuff. But yeah, it was nicely diverse patches of stuff. Next. At the same place, they had a mixed planting of guavas interplanted with turmeric. Curcuma is amazing medicinal, if you don't know. Anti-inflammatory to the max. I mean, this is something you really should know about. Turmeric. So they're growing it as a catch crop in between their guava plants. So they have guavas in rows that are kind of young. They'll eventually grow out and shade everything, but in the meantime, they have these alleys growing in between of a catch crop like this. This takes just 1 year to grow, whereas the guavas will take a couple years to start producing and then kind of shade things out. They had a big fruit production area that they were doing trials on, it looked like, including tropical peaches and all kinds of things in there. And this is their vivero, or their nursery. And that's kind of what I do. I like to propagate fruit trees and stuff, so I was especially interested in this area. We were passing through there so fast I didn't get to talk to as many people as I would have liked to, but I noticed there that they had all kinds of propagation going on. Seedlings, cuttings, and what they call injerto, or grafting. Different plants, you propagate in different ways depending on how true to seed they are or how easy they are to root themselves. But they had all those things going on there, and it was rather impressive. They're using the very cheap and thin black plastic bags to grow in, which are relatively cheap compared to our big heavy pots that we use. And they can use them a few times over and over, but that's what they were doing there, and it was impressive. They had quite a few trees there. Next. This is out in the countryside, and I'm standing next to a living fence post. And so there's many trees that you can plant a cutting of, especially in the tropics. There's some here too, like willow, for example, that you can use as a living fence post. And instead of the fence post, decaying one day and falling down, it actually gets bigger and better. So here's the first year planting, just starting to sprout, and here's one that's maybe 10 years old. And this is called polarding. Polarding is when you cut something up high. Coppice is when you cut it down low. These are all different types of what we might call a disturbance regime, or the harvesting of, right? So we're pruning them back and using those branches to feed animals for firewood or for mulch and compost or whatever, or building materials. So this is a renewable technique where you're using a tree to make a more permanent infrastructure. So you might at first have some fence posts made out of metal, but over time your living fence post would take over. And you could actually take cuttings of this and make more fences. So this is very well used in the tropics, Gliricidia sepium, or Madre de Cacao. I forget the name of this one. They call it the sunburned tourist because it has this peeling bark. I forget the name of that one. Yeah. But there's a few, and here we have willows, and gosh, there's, what's another one I want to think of? Oh, any of the, like even elderberry fence. How about that? Next.
Yeah. Or locust.
Locust, yeah. So here's another application of that technique using cactus and other trees. Here's where it keeps on getting polarded, just up here about shoulder height. And here's everything cut back, and there was just big piles of debris here that they could gather up and feed to animals or compost or burn or whatever. And this was a coastal site, and it was amazingly next to the ocean. I couldn't believe it, but next. It had all this agroforestry kind of infrastructure around it to kind of protect it. Look at how close they are to the ocean. I mean, you can literally throw a rock in the ocean. This was so saturated down here that when I walked out there, I found a little spot to stand, and that's the only place where there was the red biting ants, because it was the only dry spot. I was like, wow, you guys farming this? Tricky. So yeah, I like again the graphics and stuff, just hilarious. You gotta have good graphics and good signage at your place, Keep people coming back. Next. We ate a lot of coconuts there. It was awesome. So this is where we stayed for the main part of the conference. This was a rural kind of a beach resort for the common people. They do have high-end resorts there. Just because the Americans or people from the United States don't go there doesn't mean there's not a lot of Canadians and Germans and all kinds of people with lots of money coming to Cuba to be tourists. And just down the beach, about 2 miles from where we were staying, I could pick up the phone and call California. You know, they had everything. All inclusivo, you know, everything. And but this was like the people's resort. You know, no hot water. it was bare bones, but it was great. In that it stopped raining the first day. We had huge floods coming out of Havana, but this is where we stayed in these little places like this, and yeah, that's where we stayed for about 5 more days. Next. Yeah, in any island area, or if you have streams or rivers, ocean, you need to know about the fish and the seaweed and all these things. And so whether you're doing your aquaponics thing or farm fishing, or you know how to take care of fish to where you're not taking just the, not taking the ones that are about to give birth to more, you know how to manage them in the wild management, wild harvesting, you know, all those things I think should be part of the whole picture in learning how to take care of ecosystems and rehabilitate them and regenerate them. Is because both with vegetation management and managing animal populations, you can affect them to the benefit by actually harvesting. And that's something that as white people we become guilty of because we've abused it, we've over-harvested. But native people knew how to harvest things in the season, in the rhythm, to actually improve the quality of the plant material or the animals that were left behind to breed more of. So I enjoy watching these guys. I used to do some spear fishing in Hawaii, so it was cool to see these guys who, had a nice little catch there from their spear fishing. We had people from all over the world, and there was some women from Taiwan that came out too. Of course, we had in Maui agroforestry. We had with Penny Livingston and Brock and stuff, and Doug Bullock. And so I have a great T-shirt of theirs. But this is their book in Chinese about doing permaculture and food forests and all this stuff. It was just so beautiful to see. So we have people from all over the world just giving these presentations for days and days. It was just really, heartwarming and like, yeah, look at these graphics. though. I love these graphics.
Yeah.
Just love it. And of course, this is the front of the book. This is the back, right? Chinese. So it's cool. Next. Right. And then, of course, we have our local heroes that were there, right? We had a lot of local. This is Christopher Shine. He teaches permaculture up at Merritt College. So, it was fun, like I said, to see people from all over the world, and then people I see every day. So, next.
He was right there 6 months ago.
Yeah. We love Christopher. Amazingly, they had these things going. There were so many things going on. It's like a 3-ring circus. You couldn't keep up with it, man. There's these people are talking those. It's just like, oh man, I think I've got to go lay down in my hammock or something. So this one says the seed exchange of permaculturalists, male or female, is the guarantee of our harvest, right? So this was their thing. I didn't know this was going on. They just did it. I was like, hey, I didn't know about that. So here they are. They got all their different seeds. There was people from all over the world just sharing seeds. It was radical. It was like, wow, these guys are farmers. These guys, I don't know if they whatever. These guys are, and the women too. I'm not just saying the guys, the women too. It was awesome. Next. So in that area, it's a lot of sandstone, and there's massive caves all over the place. It's really interesting geography, and that's where all the revolucionarios hid out in those caves. It's real famous. In fact, where the permaculture course was before this conference was in the cave, next to the caves where Che hung out, and all that, and Fidel. But this particular place is called the Cuevas de Bellamar, and this is in an area with a beautiful bay nearby. But this place was scheduled for development because it has this beautiful bay, and they were going to build a big hotel on top of these caves. And this is like a national monument. And you're drilling and the weight and water, you could just ruin these places very easily by messing around on top of them. So what did they do? They created a farm. These caves were crazy. They went for miles. they created a farm on top that would not, that wouldn't be going crazy with all this kind of development and bulldozers and everything. They made an agroforestry planting up there. So here we have, there was over a dozen species of hardwood tropical trees that we found here, interplanted with fruit and nut trees. And they had this house that was so cool. Rain catchment all the way around, and this was like a little they had fish and aquaponic kind of things growing all around this thing. This is all roof catchment. Next, please. Just the architecture was just spectacular. A lot of these places, the thatch and the natural building all over the place.
Yeah.
And then, so, I'm telling you, the places I look at is where the water coming from and where's the shit going. Those are the two questions I'm looking at when I'm in a place that I'm new to. Where's the water coming from and where's the shit going? So check this out. So here's that big thatch thing. Here's the rain catchment that they've got up high. They've got a solar oven. This is the kitchen here, and this is a little window you open up that's to the south that's like a little solar stove right in the kitchen. You just open a little door, and this is the outside little solar oven part. It's like a little box of glass and a little metal thing. And then here is the bathroom. See this here? So here's the vent for the composting toilet, right? Black pipe in the sun will heat up and draw and give you the positive draft, so you're sucking air in where the seat is and it's coming out the top. And also right here in this little jug is a urine separated special urine reservoir. And so this is on the inside. Look at this, with the rum bottles, right? But look at that, privacy lighting, right? Let the light in, but nobody can look in. Here's the separate urinal that goes into this jug, and here's the dry composting toilet there. So that was beautiful. If you're gonna make some kind of a crazy new thing, like we're gonna compost our shit, make it beautiful. Make it smell good. Make it like you want to go there, not like you're afraid to because it's nasty. Look at that. That is a beautiful place to go do your thing. People want to come there. Next. Oh yeah, so the car thing, we were in this like deluxe bus. It was kind of embarrassing. It was like giant bus. But it did give us a good view, and some of the areas were amazingly horses, bikes, and people. Amazing. Like this street here, we were stopped here and watched this go by for like 5 or 10 minutes of just like these little pedicab things and horse carts and just like a traffic jam with no cars. Just carts and animals and people on bikes and just like, it's crazy. These things, these little cargo bikes. Look at this guy, his little sidecar. That guy, man. He was like right in front of us. Anyway. Yeah, next. And see, that's why I would want to go back and maybe tour by bicycle. Because it was too fast, our tour. Another rural place we went to, now this is what I'm talking about. When I go to the tropics, that's the baseline right there. Baseline. Coconuts, papaya, banana.
Mango.
Mango too. But those three are continuous yield. Not mango, that's more seasonal. It can be a couple times a year. But coconuts, papaya, and what was that other one I mentioned? Banana. Year-round harvest. And so in the papaya and banana, you can harvest after 1 year of planting in the tropics. But the coconuts, anyway, I can keep going. Next.
What about plantains?
Plantain, bananas, exactly. So you can cook bananas. Bananas is a big name. Bananas could include the cooking types or the fresh eating types for sure. And as a staple, they would be the macho or the burro or whatever. But a lot of those you can eat ripe if you let them turn totally black. So it depends. But yeah, a lot of them, like in Hawaii, for example, they never really ate raw bananas. They only cooked their bananas traditionally in the Hawaiian Islands. They had many, many varieties they brought in their canoes with them. So yeah, we call them bananas, but they might be cooking bananas. It's a really good point as a staple, a starchy staple.
What about cucumber?
Yeah, there was some cucumber being grown. Cucumber is being an annual, it's a little more delicate. I think more resilient crop in that vein would be like a chayote vine. Those last for years and they're a little bit tougher, have a little bit more protection. But yeah, cucumbers grow fine there. Yeah, absolutely. So at this place with the coconuts, they had a good biogas system where they were feeding, let's see here. I don't know if I have that dome here. There was a little feeding chute where the manure would go in under this dome that had the rim of it underwater, so it would catch all the gases coming up, and then they had that piped off to where they're actually using it in a kitchen over here where they were processing a bunch of stuff they grow on the farm. So it was pretty interesting. This is a farm scale or community, small community scale, I would say. You know, like you could probably run this on a block worth of people, you know, like a dozen houses probably could feed that system for biogas of that scale. Next. This guy was cool. We had this bus stop and, you know, some people want to go and buy trinkets or whatever, and that's cool, or get a drink or go to the bathroom, but I went on back and looked at this garden back here, and he had sugar cane and bananas and all kinds of stuff growing, his tomatoes and everything. This guy right here. And man, that guy was so cool. He's another one of these gardeners, right, that's like doing his own thing in the back. He keeps the front all in flowers, but in the back it's like full on food for us. And this guy was so cool. He was like, yeah, where are you from, you know? And I said, well, I'm from the United States. He said, oh yeah, you're from the United States. He says, I'm from Cuba. We're friends. see as he's giving us the thumbs up there. Yeah, we're friends. It's like, this guy saw the revolution. That guy's old enough, he saw the revolution. Next. Another place we saw, it was kind of rural, but it was next to these huge apartment blocks like this. This is how it is, right? It's all rural and then these huge apartment blocks. Wow. But this had the perennial cucumber. This is a little different than a regular cucumber. This is a perennial cucumber. This is ginger plants here. This was a really nice gardens. They had some, this is deep rice hull mulch, rice husk mulch, a lot of perennial beds of vegetables and annuals in here. Again, with the moringa, you want to harvest that? It's getting a little tall. You cut it right there, you know, coppice it, whatever. And then over here they have the organiponico, you know, lettuce. Oh, next. Yeah, there's the organiponico kind of raised bed thing again, and then, but this was sweet, man. They had a lot of really cool fruit trees and quick stuff, all interplanted. A nice polyculture that was young but was going to produce a lot of fruit. Amazingly, some things that I'm familiar with from Hawaii weren't there, like jackfruit, and there were some things I was just confused why they didn't have more of. But some of it has to do with history, like for example with the breadfruit. Only a few people had it because breadfruit was seen as a slave food in the Caribbean. And so, whereas in Tahiti, it's the staple. They have dozens of varieties, you know, and it's very central to their culture. But it's such a productive plant, it's just culturally inappropriate there because of that history. But maybe that could be changed, you know, because it's such a great staple. Next. And then another one, which this was originally a flower farm that they got into permaculture, kind of food growing and organic stuff. Organiponico Linda Flor. And here again with the nice graphics and stuff. Look at this. I love this stuff. So here's this was a woman. Look at her little t-shirt. Yo hago permacultura. I do permaculture. And so yeah, they had all these beautiful patterned gardens and raised beds and all this stuff and fragrant flowers. Come on. You got to have some fragrant. Look, flowers, and let me just say this. In your permaculture designs, aesthetics is a function you should be designing for. Your gardens should be culturally appropriate. They should speak the language of the people who are going to be enjoying them. They can't be a bunch of weird plants nobody's ever seen before. That's cool, but you have to have plants they can relate to, including fragrant flowers, and besides, they're all good for beneficial insects too. All those pollen and nectar sources, the native plants, those beautiful flowers. So don't forget all that stuff, because I know people that are, oh, I'm into permaculture, I'm only planting food. Well, that's not right. So I like this one. This place was beautiful. And that's the kind of gardens I want to see. Again, yeah, look at me. I'm up in the old growth nopal. Old growth nopal back there, you know. Look at that. It was about 10-foot tall nopales up there. But look at these. Throughout the garden, they had these symbols.
Wow, look at that.
So this was the key. Like, you know how you have a key on a map? You were walking through the map. Instead of a sign with a bunch of letters, you would remember, oh, that symbol means that's a special tree there or something. And you come across, and there'd just be that little symbol there. You go, oh, yeah. Right. And here, oh, look, if I see this, that means this is something that's recycling water up there. You know, so you could walk through the landscape, and then we'd have these little symbols, icons. Right? Next. I really like that. I like to think about that. This is one of the last ones here on this tour that we had. Me, I'm active in the California Rare Fruit Growers. I'm a chapter chair for the Golden Gate chapter. We had all these sign exchanges lately, giving away all kinds of pieces of wood, teaching people how to graft, grow trees, grow the crazy stuff, grow the old stuff, grow the stuff your grandparents grew. You know, for me, a rare fruit is any of that. It's not just something exotic. Something from the past, something rare. How about a golden delicious apple? Is that a rare fruit?
Yeah.
It is. Because you've never tasted it off your tree, perfectly ripe, with a little pink blush on it. You've only had the one at the farmer's market or Safeway or Whole Foods or whatever. You don't know what that tastes like. That's a rare fruit. So coming to this, I felt at home coming to this guy's place. This was like one of the last places we went to. And this place was young. So this was like some of his first harvest he was showing off, this guy. But he had the whole spread for us, from coconuts and cacao, where chocolate comes from, okra, achiote. You know what achiote is? It makes your butter yellow. You know what I'm talking about? That food dye that makes your butter yellow. Annatto bean. Bixa. Anybody? That's what that is. That's the pods of the plant, of the bixa. And there's that turmeric, curcuma, right? I was telling you, anti-inflammatory. Coffee, ginger, cassava, and look at all the fruits he's got. Acerola cherries and guavas and la la la. So that's what we do. That's like one of our California Rare Fruit Growers we do. Pretty much. That's what it looks like when you come to our meeting. So come, bring some fruits. We'll see what you got going. So yeah, I love this guy's place. He was awesome. Next, and the whole thing is that they're about sharing. So he's got his design up on the wall. Yeah, this is what's going on here. Here's the big picture, right? Here's where these plantings are. Here's where my animals move through. And down here, I'm managing this water this way. So he has a language. He has a way, a visual language, and a way to communicate these things with visitors like us from way other parts of the world. He's pointing down there. He says, "Yeah, that's where I got my really good trees down here." Next. Just a couple more images, and then I'm going to wrap up this part, and we can get into some other people's reflections. But there, what is that again?
Mame.
That's the mame. Right. That's the mame, and the piña from Brazil. And those platanos again, those bananas. Next. But yeah, it was, I liked it. It was kind of retro. It was kind of classic retro, kind of 60s, 50s, 60s kind of style. It's just some, it was almost like an abandoned building out in some bus stop place or something. This is how those things are painted. It's beautiful. Next. So, more propaganda. So this is Cuba, right? And this is Uncle Sam. And this says the blockade. Like, you know, smash the blockade, right? But I don't understand what that would be like there. You know, every place you go to is owned by the government. Every store, every hotel, any place of size is run by the government. It's weird. And there is a little bit, people have like little casa particulares where you can like stay, like a bed and breakfast kind of a thing, or a little lunch or something like that. Or people are selling stuff. People got carts and stuff and they're selling stuff. But if you want to have a business, I don't know how that's going to happen. When the blockade goes down, what does that mean? Are they going to be able, like Soviet Union, went that way and corrupt and this and that, and capitalism is this way corrupt. I mean, I don't understand. I don't pretend to, but I'm just saying, it's a special time, it's a special place. This place is Cuba. It's really interesting, and I don't understand it all, and but the people there are very friendly, and they have big hearts, and they're living with very little materially, but a great amount of nature, and they love the nature, and they love their culture, and it was really, really beautiful to see. Next. And so I want to go back and spend some more time. But this is the kind of culture I'm talking about, where they will produce, this is the kind of art and culture that's produced, where they'll be telling stories of famous people and places and the fruits. Associating people and places with fruits or vegetables or meat and milk and just like the bountifulness of the land. This is the kind of culture and arts that are created there, and it was just really fun to enjoy those. Next. Inspirational. And one of the last places we went to was next to this golf course, this beautiful tamarindo, beautiful big tree, classic drought-tolerant tree. But there it was, and we were fishing little pods off of it. So, yeah, that's what we do around here too, isn't it? Next. Yeah, and my flight back through Dallas was iced out. That was my prelude to coming home to our 20-year low that we had the first week of December. I was froze out. This was in Chicago. There was 1,000 flights canceled in Dallas. 250,000 people without power from that ice storm in the beginning of December. And I came home and was like, oh, my white sapotes didn't like that. I was, it was like beginning of December, it doesn't get that cold. Maybe, end of December or something. But I had them all out. They were not tucked away in the greenhouse or anything. So when David asked me what I wanted to talk about, I was thinking about Cuba, but I was also thinking about this drought, which is one of the driest in a long time for sure, driest on record. And then that 20-year frost. I was just thinking about kind of how we've got kind of spoiled with mild weather, cheap energy, and all this kind of easiness, and that's not always how it's going to be. But at the same time, not to suffer and beat ourselves up because we've been bad, but think about what are the opportunities, what is the inspiration to create more abundant and resilient landscapes that are more based on perennials or all these kinds of things. So a couple more slides, and then we can open it up. Yes, and here's some more. So some of my most interesting books that I've come across more recently is anything. Gary Paul Nabhan, anybody? Gary Paul Nabhan? Yeah, you need to read this guy. He's written 20 books. Read any of them, but I suggest this one as a timely one. It takes all of his studies of people growing from the Sahara to the Middle East to where he lives in the Southwest. He lives in Tucson. And puts together with a permaculture lingo. I mean, he's got Brad Lancaster in there. He's got Rebecca Newburn in there with her seed saving stuff. He's talking about all the traditional stuff and how we're using it today. Lessons from the desert farmers, growing food in hotter, drier land. And then another one just on straight up growing calories. Okay, vegetables and fruits, that's cool. But what about calories, right? John Jevons, folks, does that. Ecology Action, they talk about calorie crops, right? Carbon crops and calorie crops. Feed the soil, feed your belly, right? I mean, vegetables are good, but you need a little starch, right? You feel, make your tortillas or whatever, right? So what's interesting about Carol Dempf, she's a geneticist, and she wrote that book, How to Breed Your Own Vegetable Varieties. Anybody know that one? That's an awesome book. It's a little scary in some parts, like, damn, that's a geneticist right there, and I just kind of skipped that page, but that's a really great book. But she's like the grandma, she's like the geneticist grandma you never had or something, she's super cool. but she wrote this book, Resilient Garden, Food Production, Self-Reliance in Uncertain Times. This one's based on 5 crops, and she's celiac disease. She has celiacs. No gluten, right? A lot of people are sensitive to the gluten thing. So 5 crops, staple crops, no gluten. The 3 sisters, what are those?
Corn beans, squash.
Corn beans and squash. And then potatoes, and eggs. Corn, beans, squash, potatoes. That's all the American crops right there. Corn, beans, potatoes, squash. That's all American. That's our, from right around here, maybe a little south, maybe a little bit east. And then eggs. Bringing the animal element in for cycling nutrients. Pest control. Even if you're vegetarian, just having some animals around is awesome. Or vegan. Next. The other ones I wanted to talk about, building community resilience in more of the community context. My friend Rebecca Newburn started a couple really cool things. You know how they have those emergency preparedness things? Now this is a way that you can bridge borders. Like you might have neighbors that don't agree with you politically, may have a different diet than you or whatever. This is baseline survival, let's get together and thrive stuff, right? Like in an emergency, do you know your neighbors? That's when you get to know your neighbors. Why not get to know them beforehand and assess your community resources for resilience? And what she's developed, you know those long lists? Oh yeah, get your bag together and get this and 5 days of water and then don't forget this and that and the other. And there's like 30, 20 different things that you got to do to get prepared. You're not going to do all that, right? Oh God, it's too much. Can't do it. So she says do 2 a month. And she's got middle school kids, so she sends that away with homework. Like, yeah, your parents are going to help you do this, right? So every month they do 2 steps. And in the next month they do 2 more. And by 6 or 8 months, you've gone through the list of 14 different things, and you have your emergency contacts together. You know who needs medicine. You know where the water storage is. You know how to turn off everybody's gas. You know who's elderly and infirm. You know where all the animals are. Who's got animals that need to be taken care of? Yeah. So all these things are things that we should know about instead of just doing it running around last minute. Let's build community and get to know our neighbors doing this. The other one is the seed lending libraries. Looking at how we can share seed. A lot of times there's seed distribution, kind of like our sign exchanges. But how can we share seeds and build gardening awareness, right? Like start simple, save tomatoes and peas, and start simple. And then we can get into like hand pollination or isolation, all that complex stuff. But in the meantime, here's some really safe and easy ones. Let's get started. And let's have a seed starting class, a seed saving class, and, building capacity. Because not everybody's going to be expert gardener, that's okay, but it's nice to work with the people who are experts and spread that out. So that it's not all dependent on the experts all the time. Because they get tired or die off, or it's not balanced. Next. So the last thing I wanted to mention is this idea of community food forests. And this is a meme that's really taken off lately. This is nothing new. All these forests are food forests, these oak savannas full of oak trees and berries and beautiful little tubers that you can dig up and eat. The native people maintain that food forest for thousands of years with fire and by harvesting, right? And then the Spanish brought some, and then the pioneers of gold diggers brought theirs, and everybody brought some. But this is a meme that's being revived in the commons, in the public spaces. I think the biggest thing that I saw, because I've been watching this for years, is this Beacon Hill food forest up in Seattle. Have you guys heard about that one? It was called the biggest food forest in the United States. Wow. I don't think that's exactly accurate, but it would be one of the, it will be, it was even before they even planted a tree. Now what's cool about that is that the tree hugger or one of these something on the internet caught it. And it was a meme that time has come. Yeah. And that has spread to where we have University of Florida. We've got people up in Maine. We've got people down in Southern California and up in the Rocky Mountains, all starting in their own parks or schools or campuses. They're finding spaces to come together and plant trees and herbs and flowers. Not just a vegetable garden that if you walk away it might get full of weeds and kind of, these are trees. These will be bearing for generations. And that to me is something that I'm really interested in. And even lately, I mean, I know a lot of people like, Jackie and Toensmeyer. I mean, that's really the college level text on edible forest dynamics. But what I'm enjoying seeing is like this just came on Facebook like a week ago. And this guy's got 30 different references to different food forest projects all over the United States. I mean, that's what's happening now. It's just blowing up. So this is a wave that's happening. So I just wanted to spread some of these ideas out that I've been watching, and I wanted to hear from from you other folks, but these are just some things that I found inspiring. I got some contact information up there, and I work with David all the time, so we can hopefully continue the conversation and get together and play around with plants and see how we can keep the place resilient and abundant. So that's all I have for now.
Yeah, John.
And thank you for John for his great presentation. He was clearly much more diligent in his photo taking, and he gave a wonderful presentation of really the whole gist of the whole conference. And he went on a few more tours than I did as well, so it was really cool to kind of see those experiences and those pictures. And, yeah, a lot of really cool things. And this is a great segue for me. My presentation kind of reiterates a lot of what John had to say, as well as just kind of brings in some more conceptual ideas. And, oh no.
We don't have a newer version.
Oh, but is that gonna, can you, yeah, that's it.
But
If we can,
how do we?
can we enlarge it in that? Anyway.
Maybe.
I
Oh. Well,
don't know.
we can
Well,
maybe make this.
Or even, you know, it's really just brief and kind of goes over a lot of just the concepts and kind of the threads of what John was covering in his presentation, and really how this relates to this whole bringing these ideas that we gathered in Cuba back to kind of the issues that we're having in California. And yeah, that's pretty big.
Drag that corner.
If anything, these are really just
There
notes
we
for me.
go.
Cool.
We've done that before.
Okay, we gotta go like this. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Hey, all right.
Right on.
Beautiful.
So, here we go. Resiliency, bringing back ideas from Cuba back to California and how we can apply these to our communities. You know, just kind of starting off, what is resiliency? What does it mean to be resilient? And it's able to withstand and recover quickly from difficult conditions. And, you know, before this wonderful storm that has come upon us, we were, you know, slowly crawling towards or quickly running towards some difficult conditions here in this state. Go for it, Dave. Let's see, oh yeah, that's a little difficult to read. So how do we achieve resiliency within our communities? There's a few things, and John really touched upon many of these in his presentation, but some of those are a little hard to read, but it's, you know what you have to offer personally. Your skill sets, your education, services and products you have to offer to your community in this process of rebuilding a resilient community. And knowing your neighbor, I think that's really important. John mentioned that. Really knowing who is your community, outside of your friendships, outside of your coworkers, really who is it that you need to interact with to really build the community that we need in difficult times. Knowing your bioregion, the resources that are around you, and how to access those resources and utilize them. And really governance and infrastructure, you know, the idea of this transition and the anarchy that might ensue with these difficult conditions. Ultimately, we need to create infrastructure that allows us to hear everyone's ideas, to put people in the right situations, and to start to rebound during these times. Here we go. We do permaculture. There's a little title there, I don't know. Okay, keep going. So we saw that sign all over the place as we were going. This is a really cool little farm. Me and Finn actually ran into on a walk outside of town in a space before actually the conference. This guy's Raul Reyes, his integral farm, as you can see, integrated farm, and he was really founded in elements of agroecology, and he had a lot of really cool kind of agroforestry systems set up. And this portion too, kind of these concepts that I'm trying to bring up, one of these steps towards building this resilient community is adopting and developing agroecological concepts. I think that's a hurdle in this country, as well as, you know, Cuba really showed that they took it on. I think their agriculture is 70 or 80% completely organic, and like people were saying, they're a sustainable country, island. They need to be because they're so isolated. So this is a big theme. Learning to adopt these agroecological systems in our country. once again, soil conservation and increasing fertility, the same sort of picture John showed with the vermin bins. Really impressive, these cinder block beds of worms and irrigated, and the whole thing is really a neat little system they had set up. And once again, compost, I think I have an inkling here, many people here are either practitioners or students of permaculture, so this might be much of preaching to the choir, but of course, returning the fertility to the soil.
Next slide.
Raised beds made from, repurposed materials. Very essential, very adaptable ways of gardening and utilizing those resources. Once again, John really touched upon that really well. And it goes beyond the ecological standpoints too. I think it's really important to establish these infrastructures that feed us so that we can stick around long enough to have the debate about how we pick up the pieces. But once again, these are really, perennial infrastructure like this is really essential. Going towards agroforestry systems is definitely a piece of the puzzle, for sure. And you can see a lot of these same pictures, intercropping and really concentrating on medicinals too. We do need to produce our own medicine as well as our own food. And once again, that same thing, guava and turmeric on the left, and that's a grapevine there next to a bed of, I think, cabbage, some sort of brassica coming in there. So very integrated farm. That one in particular was really cool. So increasing that biodiversity as well. And going back to this climate change and really what we need to do to establish these agricultural systems in a time where there is uncertainty and these weather patterns are starting to be less and less predictable for us, developing these appropriate technologies that allow us to have resilient agricultural systems. Throughout the tropics, oftentimes this is not a greenhouse, it's a shade house. They have intense heat and sunlight and UV, so they almost go the other direction. They live in a greenhouse. So they produce structures like this that allow crops to rebound and grow more effectively in difficult situations.
And to keep the rain off.
Exactly, yeah, because there is such heavy rain. I mean, lettuce loves rain, but those are tomatoes. And it is permeable to allow the moisture to come in, but it is at a much different level than the torrential downpours that we experienced when we were there too.
Yeah.
And shade structures as well. This is a really interesting concept that they had implemented on this farm, which is broad, let alone these raised beds, which is incredible. They cut acres of covered with these raised beds, but also these shade structures that they would actually pull across wires, across all of these fields during intense sun in the middle of the day. They had the infrastructure set up to protect those crops. So we have high tunnels, hoop houses around here. There's a lot of this appropriate technology we can utilize to create more adaptable agricultural systems.
Is there animal protection too?
Absolutely. And thank you, John. Yeah. So moving towards this kind of agricultural systems in times of uncertainty, moving back towards kind of a more photosynthetic society is going to be a part of this whole transition as well. Utilizing animal traction is going to be huge. These are concepts that it's difficult to see it being widely accepted in this country with the advancement of technology and everything being such a focal point, but I think it is integral for sure. As well as going back to hand labor and really just utilizing our populations to really create effective agricultural systems. Many hands make light work, and I think that's going to be a part of that transition as well. And intensifying our home-scale production systems, I think, is really integral. All these really kind of sexy, broad-scale options we have is really important, but at the same time, they still do utilize a lot of energy. Whereas one of these things like transportation is a huge issue moving into the future, especially with climate change. So, we went to sites like this that these home systems were so abundant with the food available, and especially integrating more perennial crops, I think you can have very low maintenance systems available at home, at your doorstep, creating food security for yourself in times of need. Once again, kind of more of the same. Bananas, there's beans, there's squash in there, some more crops, chives, different things growing all over the place. There is space, you just have to utilize what you have. Once again, they're using kitchen sinks to grow lettuce. That's great. and integrating animals into the urban landscape as well. You know, palomas. We can start eating pigeons if we need to. Just really bringing protein back down to the ground level and really integrating urban animal husbandry is going to be a part of it, which is prevalent across much of Latin America, yet it's kind of a tough thing to grapple with in this country. Along with these agroecological principles that we need to kind of integrate conserving and storing water. I mean, there's plenty of it right now, and we're losing a lot of it to runoff. You know, in other countries like Australia, it's been mandated for like 25 years. Like, new construction comes with a rainwater catchment barrel, and there's still political hurdles in this country to really implement a lot of that infrastructure. So that's going to be integral to moving forward.
What's that tank made of?
Which one? This one?
Yeah, up above.
I think it's just a black PVC tank. And this lady had a really interesting, she had these gutter systems moving through her old garden that went into little concrete baths and tubs, and she had fish and stuff going on. You can be creative with it as well. It doesn't straight up have to be the utilitarian standpoint. Yeah, so once again, kind of bringing it back to the social side of this, you know, a lot of what is planted on the ground and what we're going to eat is going to be an important part, but how we interact with each other, sharing our experiences like we're doing here tonight. I mean, that's why we are here, is to kind of share our experience and our knowledge so that it keeps permeating through our community. These people were amazing, you know, hosts on a lot of the tours, and they educated us amongst what they were doing. A couple more, Raul. You know, he has his whole gamut of stuff that he was growing there on his farm. His
Those are
food
Mamey?
forests. Those are Mamey.
What?
These are the Mamey.
What?
And he had a whole bunch of stuff. He had bottles of Guarapo, which was really kind of cool, pressed sugarcane juice. That he started. I mean, he had this farm stand was out in the middle of the fields, right? And yet people still trekked out there and bought stuff. It was really cool. That sort of local economy is really important as well, because it allows that face-to-face interaction to educate the community on what the producers are actually doing as well. This was really interesting too. This young man pretty much came up and really gave us the whole jam out on his community system, and was very eloquent and very educated amongst, you know, what his community was doing. And I'm glad John touched on it, and it is such an important part of permaculture, is to maintain our aesthetics and to perpetuate beauty throughout this movement as well. All of these do have a function even beyond the pretty colors. They do provide pollination services, but we might as well, you know, look good while we're doing it. So I love flowers. Might as well integrate them all over the place. Go for it. Okay, this one's a little tricky, but this is kind of bringing back kind of outside of this ecological realm that we're talking about. Is probably the biggest hurdles we encounter. I mean, getting the food on the ground is really important and is an essential part of this whole movement, but I think the hardest hurdle that we're going to run into is the social aspects. How do we start the conversation amongst our communities to really establish these permanent structures that are so important? I think we're a little out of practice in terms of working as a community and really deciding what we need as a whole to move forward and have a sustainable future. So a few thoughts of my trip to Cuba. People in Cuba are supported by the government, which is a fantastic premium for them as well. I mean, people have free education, free healthcare. I mean, me and Finn walked into a healthcare clinic. He's an American, and he got served. You know, like, really impressive.
It took a long time.
Yeah, like an hour and a half. It's like hours in this country, even in an ER, if you got, you know, an open wound. I don't know. So, but it did take a little bit. But they certainly didn't have their needs met either. John pointed out the canasta and kind of their public allotment, but at the same time, a lot of people described how it really wasn't enough. It was kind of part of the system and everyone appreciated it, but it didn't quite meet everyone's needs. And I think that's a really important take home too. And governmental control makes a lot of decisions easier. They can sweep across the country and give the land to the people, take out the private sector, and make that production really happen for the community. Yet it clearly still comes as a hindrance to the population as well. It really does limit the freedoms and the expression of the people, as well as maybe some more effective community-based systems that could be established outside of a centralized government.
For example,
What's that?
what are they being kept from doing?
What are they being kept from doing?
For one thing, I know
Yeah.
farmers are told what to grow, and
Thank you.
90% of their food crops are taken from them usually. They're only left with 10% to sell on their own.
Mhm.
Like managing their exports and stuff, they grow a certain amount of tobacco. This farm you grow tobacco, this one you grow sugar cane, this one. So it's kind of controlling.
And the transfer of technology and knowledge as well is very limited in Cuba. They have a stranglehold on what information is coming in and the availability of resources to them. It's very much a agrarian society.
And along with the medical thing is the abundance of well-trained scientific technicians and laboratory technicians. So there's a lot of these, I didn't get to see one, but I read about them and I asked about them on these rural access points where they have these laboratories brewing out different biological pesticides like Bacillus thuringiensis for mosquitoes or for caterpillars. And they have other biologicals, I think the mycorrhizal stuff they're getting into now. So they can cultivate and grow out their own biological controls, and those are made available through the places where you would buy your seeds and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was interesting. That's all done by the government too.
Yeah, and there's the access point too. So it is both sides. It is very much both sides. But that's a very good point that Finn came across. The governmental control. They're taking that 90% and putting it into their GDP. It's not for the local community to instill economy. It's export for their small island. So that is definitely catch-22.
Well, let me just admit too that there was a lot of imported food that we were eating as tourists.
Yeah.
I mean, I ate butter from Germany. I ate, stuff from all over the world because their trade agreements are so limited. They couldn't get it. You grow what you can grow for the highest value to trade for what's cheaper to buy than to grow yourself. The craziness of commodities. So a lot of it was weird in that way. That like the seafood, it's like that was a local seafood, man.
Yeah.
That was Asian seafood or something crazy. It's like wow.
Yeah. And limitations to animal protein. That was a really big thing. Like there isn't cow ranching. There really isn't. There's milk and egg production, but there really isn't a whole lot of dairy, nor is there a huge allotment, definitely not like in this country, of
Does that mean that people are eating largely vegetarian
staples.
diets?
Yeah.
Pork.
But
And they-
so every day a
Or
little
in
bit,
China.
or
Yeah. What's that?
every day a little meat, or just
I would say a little bit of meat. Yeah, on a somewhat regular basis in terms of pork.
did
Numerous,
people eat healthy?
numerous times I met young men my age who complained to me that they were really malnutritioned and should have grew up and been bigger adults.
Underdeveloped.
And we're like, why are you bigger than me? You don't know a black guy, right? It was a weird thing. A couple times I had that people were really confessing not enough
They were
protein.
hungry.
Yeah.
And very much staple crops like plantains, malanga, potatoes, rice and beans. Not like salads galore. Not a lot of very vitamin-rich, nutrient-rich foods. I think what I encountered at least was a lot of staple crops in much of their daily food intake. It was accessible. You could get salad crops, but it definitely wasn't a center point. Not that I experienced.
Beef is actually illegal. There's no open market to buy beef there, and you only receive it if you have a 5-year-old in your family. So they're monitoring because it's such limited beef. And there's 2 currencies existing in Cuba, and one for tourists. So tourists can go and buy meat and lobster and beef, but the other currency that Cubans use, you can't buy it at those stores. So
Why not?
it's prohibited.
It's governmental control, and it's 2 sides of the coin, right? Like that's one extreme, and people being somewhat malnourished. That's like one side of the coin, as well as our availability of meat in our country has provided the opportunity to have this conversation in the first place. Right? It is creating climate change as we speak as well. So it lands on the spectrum somewhere in there. Another thing about Cuba, providing incentive to share, cooperate, compromise, and work as is a perpetual challenge in a large society. It is in our country as well as it is in theirs. There's, I think what I encountered was people make $5 to $20 a month, equivalent to ours a month.
Yeah.
And it's free to get your PhD or MD, but there's no incentive to serve those voids in the population. Many people that held very educated positions in society would also turn to just becoming a custodian. Because what's the difference really between $20 and $12? You're with government support as well. So that was something I encountered there too. And I think that's, regardless of Cuba, an overarching hurdle that comes up in redeveloping community structure and how we're going to move forward in times of need. I don't know, just some thoughts. As well as stewarding our resources in a way that supports our community and not an overarching global economy. Recreating traditional value systems, which I think is very steadfast in Latin American culture. I think it's really interesting how that does bring a tighter weave on the ground floor to local communities. And maybe something that we've kind of lost somewhat in our country in times and areas. Providing a fair share while maintaining earth care and considering a people care. That's kind of everything that we were just talking about. Between food politics to the government to natural resource management, these are big hurdles that we need to start thinking about how to approach these issues in new ways. And creating incentive and sharing knowledge and developing appropriate technologies is really important too. I think in this country, because we do have such a focal point on high technology, like really elaborate technology that is very energy intensive and will lead us to a prosperous future. Whereas giving incentive towards simpler technologies, which to be honest in the long run are just as complex and suit the needs of the community just as much as kind of how high technology can really come into play and help us down the road. Let's see, integrating underrepresented individuals in our community and creating purposeful existences for them as well. And really, what I mean by that is people with access to land, people with access to resources, people with money to develop their community space is a foundation of these movements, of course. People with resources can do a lot. But at the same time, if we don't find spaces for other people to become productive within the system, then ultimately we're carrying them along rather than integrating them as a member of the movement. So I think it's just really, whether it's a prison population, whether it's a handicapped population, people with developmental disabilities, I think it's really essential to integrate everyone into this movement and not just those people that can engage themselves. As well as, dissolving our, and kind of really bringing on a community mindset. Dissolving the societal ego that we have, that, yours is yours and mine is mine, and really moving past that to engage ourselves in a system that really just brings kind of the fair share to the whole community. Is all, just kind of things to think about as we're kind of moving into these times of change. Mm-hmm. And that says it might get crappy, so hug it out and dig in.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Get that compost pile started. It might get crappy. And yeah, save that Mother Earth and you'll save the life. Go for it. My name is Nick Slobodian. I do some permaculture design, installation, and kind of on that same note of integrating those people with disabilities as well. I work with a 23-year-old autistic young man here in town, and we planted out an acre food forest this past year. And I teach him, I give him vocational training skills, and he's a brute. He's highly functioning autistic, and there's no reason why people like that, like my student, cannot be play an integral role in this whole movement as well, just as amongst everyone else with the education or resources to be able to participate. And that's it. Thanks.